My name is Travis, 28 years old, and cars have been my passion since I could walk. That classic '67 Mustang was my pride and joy, purchased with every penny I saved working overtime for 3 years. When I returned from a 2-week business trip to Seattle, my garage was empty. The Mustang was gone. My parents stood there smiling when I confronted them. Their words cut deeper than any knife could. "Your brother legally owns it now. Max needs it more than you do." Before I continue this story of betrayal and justice, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button to follow more stories about standing up for yourself when even family crosses the line. I grew up in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Detroit, Michigan. Our family was what most would call middle class. My dad worked as a production manager at one of the automotive plants, and Mom was an elementary school teacher. We never had luxury, but we were comfortable, at least financially. My fascination with classic cars started when I was about 7 years old. My Uncle Bob would visit occasionally in his 1970 Dodge Charger. The rumble of that engine was like music, and the sleek lines of the body captivated my imagination. Uncle Bob noticed my interest and started bringing car magazines whenever he visited. We would spend hours flipping through pages of restored classics, discussing engine specifications and restoration techniques. Those were some of the happiest moments of my childhood. Home life was a different story. I have one younger brother, Max, 4 years my junior. From as early as I can remember, there was always an imbalance in how we were treated. Max was the golden child who could do no wrong. When he broke the living room window playing baseball indoors, it was dismissed as boys being boys. When I accidentally scratched the coffee table with my homework binder, I was grounded for a week. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. Max received new sports equipment, the latest video games, and endless praise for mediocre accomplishments. Meanwhile, I was constantly told to be more responsible, to work harder, and to set a good example. By 15, I had accepted that I would need to be self-sufficient if I wanted anything in life. I got my first job at 16 washing dishes at a local diner after school and on weekends. The pay was minimal, but I saved every dollar. My parents never asked what I was saving for. They were too busy attending Max's baseball games and bragging about his average grades to their friends. It hurt, but I channeled that pain into determination. Cars became my escape. When I turned 18 and moved out to attend college, I took my savings with me. It was not enough for a car yet, but I continued working part-time throughout college. By 22, I had graduated with a mechanical engineering degree and landed a decent job at an automotive parts manufacturer. The search for my dream car began the moment I had stable income. I scoured online listings, visited local dealers, and joined car enthusiast forums. I knew exactly what I wanted: a 1967 Ford Mustang Fastback, preferably in Highland Green, the same model Steve McQueen drove in Bullitt. The search took almost a year. I found her at a specialized classic car dealer 300 miles away. She was not in perfect condition, with some body rust-worn interior and an engine that needed work. But the moment I saw her, I knew she was the one. The dealer wanted $28,000, practically every cent I had saved since I was 16. Without hesitation, I signed the papers. Driving that Mustang home was one of the most exhilarating experiences of my life. The vibration of the steering wheel, the distinctive growl of the V8 engine, even the slight pull to the right that needed fixing everything, felt perfect. I named her Eleanor, after the famous Mustang from Gone in 60 Seconds. For the next 3 years, I poured my heart, soul, and most of my disposable income into restoring Eleanor. Weekends were spent in my rented garage space, researching authentic parts, learning restoration techniques, and meticulously bringing her back to life. I reupholstered the interior with period-correct materials, rebuilt the engine to factory specifications, and had the body professionally repainted in that iconic Highland green. When I finally installed the last chrome trim piece, she was glorious, better than showroom condition. Eleanor became more than just a car to me. She represented every extra shift I had worked, every social event I had skipped to save money, every hour spent learning and perfecting my restoration skills. She was the physical manifestation of my independence from a family that had always made me feel second best. My relationship with my parents remained strained but cordial after college. We would meet for occasional dinners, usually with Max present. They never visited my apartment or showed interest in my restoration project, despite knowing how important it was to me. When I finally drove Eleanor to their house for a Sunday dinner, my father merely commented that I had wasted money on an old car while my mother worried about oil stains on their driveway. Max, now 24, and still living at home while half-heartedly attending community college, showed unusual interest in Eleanor. He asked for rides, wanted to show her off to his friends, and repeatedly commented on how chicks must love this car. I allowed him to sit in the passenger seat occasionally, but never handed over the keys. Something in my gut told me not to trust him behind the wheel. By 28, my career was progressing well. I had been promoted to senior design engineer working on efficiency improvements for modern electric vehicle components. The irony of preserving automotive history while helping design its future was not lost on me. My work occasionally required travel to other facilities or partner companies. In April, I was scheduled for a 2-week trip to Seattle to collaborate with a software team on a new battery management system. Before leaving, I made sure Eleanor was securely stored in my locked garage, covered with her protective cloth. I even installed a small security camera that would alert me if the garage door was opened, though I never imagined I would need it. I had no idea that this routine business trip would set in motion events that would change my life and my family forever. The flight back from Seattle landed late on a Friday evening. I was exhausted but satisfied with the project progress. All I wanted was to get home, get some rest, and spend Saturday taking Eleanor for a drive along the lake shore. The weather forecast promised perfect conditions for a cruise with the windows down. When the Uber dropped me off at my apartment, something felt immediately wrong. I could not place it until I unlocked the side door to my garage and flipped on the lights. The space was empty. Eleanor was gone. My heart dropped to my stomach. I frantically searched the small garage, as if a 1967 Mustang could somehow be hiding in a corner. I checked my phone for security notifications, but there were none. The camera appeared to have been disconnected 3 days after I left. My hands shook as I called the police. The dispatcher took my information calmly, asking for the vehicle description VIN number and when I had last seen it. She promised an officer would arrive within the hour to take a formal report. While waiting, I paced anxiously around the empty garage, trying to understand what had happened. The main door showed no signs of forced entry. Either someone had picked the lock with considerable skill, or they had a key. My mind raced through possibilities: professional car thieves targeting classics, a random opportunity theft, or something else entirely. Officer Martinez arrived 40 minutes later. He inspected the garage, took photographs, and filled out a stolen vehicle report. As he was asking about anyone who might have access to my garage, my neighbor Frank appeared in the doorway. "Travis, you are back. Did you find your car?" Frank called out, confusion evident on his face. "No, it was stolen while I was away," I replied. Frank's expression changed to one of concern. "Stolen, but I saw your parents loading it onto a trailer last weekend. I assumed you had asked them to move it or something." My blood ran cold. "My parents? You are sure it was them?" "Absolutely. Your dad was directing while some guys loaded it. Your mom was there too, in their silver SUV. I waved hello and they waved back. They had keys to your garage and everything." Officer Martinez looked at me questioningly. I felt sick to my stomach as I explained that my parents should not have had access to my garage or my car. The officer suggested that before filing a formal theft report against family members, I should speak with them directly. It might be a misunderstanding. I knew better. There was no misunderstanding, but I agreed to speak with my parents first. As soon as the officer left, I drove straight to their house 40 minutes away in the suburbs. When I pulled into their driveway, I noticed their garage door was closed. Unusual for a Friday evening when my dad typically worked on his woodworking projects. Without bothering to knock, I used my old house key and entered through the side door. There she was, Eleanor. My beautiful Mustang was parked in my parents' garage, but she did not look the same. The immaculate finish I had maintained was now marred with small scratches. A dent on the rear quarter panel caught my eye immediately. The driver's seat was pushed all the way back, not in the position I always kept it. Most infuriatingly, someone had affixed a cheap plastic hood scoop that completely ruined the classic lines of the car. As I stood there in shock, my father entered the garage from the house. "Travis, we were not expecting you until tomorrow," he said, his tone casual as if nothing was wrong. "What is my car doing here?" I managed to ask, my voice tight with controlled anger. "Come inside. Your mother and I need to talk to you." In the kitchen, my mother was preparing dinner. Max sat at the table scrolling through his phone. They all looked up as I entered, their expressions ranging from annoyance Max to practiced concern my mother. "Why did you take my car?" I demanded, skipping any pretense of pleasantries. My mother sighed dramatically. "Honey, we need to discuss your selfishness. Max has met a wonderful girl from a good family. He needed to make a good impression. So you stole my car for him to impress a date?" I was incredulous. "We did not steal anything," my father interjected firmly. "That car technically belongs to the family." "What are you talking about? I bought it with my own money. I have all the paperwork." My father waved dismissively. "You lived under our roof when you started saving. That money was partially ours by extension. Besides, Max needs it more than you do right now. He is trying to get his life together, and this car is helping him make connections." I could not believe what I was hearing. That is absolute nonsense. I worked for every penny. I restored that car myself. It is registered in my name. "Not anymore," my mother said, sliding a document across the table. "Your brother legally owns it now. We had the title transferred last week." The document looked like a transfer of title with what appeared to be my signature on it, a signature I had never made. "This is forged," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Max finally looked up from his phone. "Dude, just let it go. You can buy another old car. I need this one for now." I turned to look at him, noticing for the first time the keys to my car hanging from his belt loop. The custom keychain Uncle Bob had given me with a miniature die-cast Mustang, attached now in my brother's possession. "You damaged it," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "There is a dent in the quarter panel. The paint is scratched." "What is that hideous scoop on the hood?" Max rolled his eyes. "I am improving it. That scoop gives it a more aggressive look. And those scratches happened at the mall. Not a big deal." "Not a big deal." 3 years of meticulous restoration work, thousands of dollars in parts, and professional painting, countless hours of labor, all dismissed as not a big deal. "I want my car back. Now. Or, I am calling the police and reporting it stolen," I stated firmly. My father stood up, his face reddening. "You will do no such thing. This is a family matter. If you involve the police, you can forget about being part of this family anymore." "Is that supposed to be a threat?" I asked, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "It is a promise," my mother added. "Max deserves this opportunity. You have always been selfish, Travis, always thinking about yourself first. It is time you thought about what your brother needs." I looked at them, these people who were supposed to love and support me equally, and saw them clearly, perhaps for the first time. They would always choose Max. They would always justify taking from me to give to him. Nothing I achieved would ever be as important as whatever Max wanted. "I will be taking my car home now," I said, reaching for the keys hanging from Max's belt. Max jerked away, and my father stepped between us. "That car is not going anywhere. The title has been transferred. Your brother legally owns it now. If you try to take it, we will report you for theft." I backed away, unable to process the level of betrayal I was experiencing. Without another word, I walked out of the house, the sound of Max's laughter following me into the driveway. I sat in my car, hands shaking too badly to put the key in the ignition. My entire body felt cold despite the warm spring evening. In that moment, I made a decision that would alter the course of all our lives. They had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. This was not just about a car anymore. It was about justice. As I drove away from my parents' house, my mind raced through possible next steps. The forged title transfer document kept flashing in my thoughts. That was illegal, unquestionably. But would the police take it seriously? Would they view it as merely a family dispute? My first stop was the local police station. The desk sergeant listened to my story with a sympathetic but slightly skeptical expression. He took notes and examined the photos I had taken of Eleanor in my parents' garage, along with pictures of the forged document. "So let me get this straight," he said after I finished explaining. Your parents took your car while you were away on business, forged your signature on a title transfer, and now claim your brother legally owns it. That is exactly what happened, I confirmed. The sergeant sighed. Mr. Walsh, I understand your frustration, but these family disputes can be complicated. Have you considered handling this through civil court rather than pursuing criminal charges against your parents? His response was disheartening, but not unexpected. I could tell he was reluctant to get involved in what he perceived as a family squabble. I thanked him for his time, and left with a copy of the incident report which felt woefully inadequate. My next call was to Sarah Levinson, a law school friend who had gone on to specialize in property law. We had kept in touch over the years, occasionally meeting for coffee when our busy schedules allowed. She agreed to meet me at a diner near her office the following morning. "This is absolutely theft," Sarah declared after hearing my story and reviewing the photos of the forged document, and forgery, and possibly identity theft, depending on how they managed to transfer the title. You have every right to pursue both criminal charges and civil action. Her confidence gave me hope. The police seemed reluctant to get involved. That is not uncommon in family disputes, unfortunately. But we can build a case they cannot ignore. She pulled out a notepad. First, we need to gather all documentation proving your ownership. Original purchase receipt, maintenance records, insurance documents, everything. I have all of that. I keep meticulous records. Good. Next, we need to prove the signature on the transfer document is forged. Do you have examples of your actual signature on official documents? Multiple. My passport, previous year's tax returns, the original title. Sarah nodded approvingly. Perfect. We also need to establish that your parents had no right to the vehicle. They might try to claim it was a gift, or that they contributed financially. They never gave me a dime toward it. I have bank statements showing the withdrawals from my personal account for the purchase. Even better. Now, do you have any witnesses who can confirm your sole ownership? Anyone who saw you working on the car, or who knew about your purchase? I thought immediately of Uncle Bob, my uncle. He was there when I bought it. He even helped me transport it home, and has seen me working on it countless times. Call him, get a statement. The more support we have, the better. As we developed our strategy, my phone buzzed repeatedly with calls from my parents. I declined them all. Finally, a text came through from my father. You need to stop this nonsense immediately. If you pursue this, you will regret it. We can make things very difficult for you. I showed Sarah the message. Her expression hardened. That is intimidation. Screenshot it and save it. This strengthens our case. Over the next few days, I gathered every scrap of documentation related to Eleanor. From the original advertisement I had responded to the bill of sale to every receipt for parts and service. I compiled photos documenting the restoration process, clearly showing the car in my possession over the years. I even had videos I had taken of first starts after major repair milestones. Uncle Bob was furious when I told him what had happened. I always knew your parents favored Max, but this crosses every line, he said during our call. I will absolutely provide a statement. In fact, I will come testify in person if needed. His support meant everything to me. For so long I had internalized the idea that maybe I was the problem, that maybe I really was selfish for not giving in to Max's wants. Hearing Uncle Bob's outrage validated what I was feeling. Not everyone was as supportive. When I explained the situation to a couple of friends from work, their responses were lukewarm. "It is just a car, man," said Craig from the engineering department. "Is it worth destroying your relationship with your family?" "They are the ones who destroyed the relationship," I replied, disturbed by his perspective. "Still, they are your parents. Maybe they really believe Max needs it more right now. Could you just let him use it temporarily?" It became clear that some people would never understand. They had not poured their heart and soul into something only to have it taken away by the very people who should have been proud of their achievement. They had not spent their entire lives being told their needs and wants were secondary. The most difficult moment came when my mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, called me. She had always been kind to me, though not particularly close. "Travis, darling, I heard about this unpleasantness with the car. Your mother is absolutely beside herself." "I am sure she is," I replied, trying to keep the bitterness from my voice. You know how much they love you. This whole thing is just a misunderstanding. Why not come over for dinner? You all can talk it out like adults. They forged my signature, Aunt Patricia. They stole my car and damaged it. That is not a misunderstanding. She sighed dramatically. Family helps family, Travis. Max is going through a phase where he needs support. Your parents are just trying to help him. Surely you can see that. By stealing from me, how does that help anyone? It is not stealing when it stays in the family, she insisted. This legal business is unnecessary. You are breaking your mother's heart. I ended the call feeling even more isolated. Was I the only one who saw how wrong this was? Was I overreacting? For a brief moment I questioned myself. Then I remembered the dent in Eleanor's quarter panel, the scratched paint, that hideous plastic hood scoop. No, I was not overreacting. With Sarah's guidance, I submitted a formal police report, specifically detailing the forgery and theft. I also filed a civil lawsuit to reclaim my property and seek damages for the unauthorized use and damage to the vehicle. The response was swift. My parents hired Martin Goldstein, one of the most expensive attorneys in the area. He immediately filed motions to dismiss both the criminal complaint and civil suit, arguing that the car had been a gift from my parents and that they had merely reclaimed family property for redistribution. The battle lines were drawn. There would be no turning back now. The wheels of justice move slowly, especially when well-paid attorneys throw up procedural roadblocks at every turn. My parents' lawyer, Martin Goldstein, was a master at delay tactics. He requested extensions, filed motions to dismiss on technical grounds, and demanded exhaustive discovery documents. Meanwhile, the police investigation into the forgery had begun in earnest. Detective Lisa Morales was assigned to the case, and unlike the desk sergeant, she took the matter seriously from our first meeting. Forgery and title fraud are not minor offenses, she explained as we sat in her sparse office. We see cases like this more often than you might think, though usually not involving family members. She had me write out several sample signatures that would be compared with the one on the fraudulent title transfer. She also requested handwriting samples from my parents and brother, which they initially refused to provide until compelled by court order. We will also need to determine exactly how the title transfer was processed, Detective Morales continued. Normally, you would both need to appear at the DMV with identification. Someone circumvented that process. The investigation uncovered something shocking. My father had a connection at the local DMV office, an old high school friend named Thomas Wilkins, who processed vehicle registrations. Phone records revealed multiple calls between them around the time of the title transfer. When questioned by police, Wilkins admitted to processing the paperwork without proper verification as a favor to my father. This revelation elevated the case considerably. It was no longer just a family dispute over a car. It now involved corruption at a government agency. My parents were called in for formal questioning. According to Detective Morales, they maintained that the car had always been intended as a family vehicle despite being registered in my name. They claimed that I had verbally agreed to share ownership, an outright lie that infuriated me when I heard it. They are changing their story, I told Sarah during one of our strategy sessions. First, it was that they partially owned it because I saved while living under their roof. Then it was that Max needed it more than me. Now they are claiming it was always meant to be shared. They are grasping at straws, Sarah reassured me. This actually works in our favor. Inconsistent stories suggest deception. The pressure began to mount on my parents when Thomas Wilkins agreed to testify against them in exchange for leniency in his own case. Suddenly, my parents and Max were facing potentially serious charges: grand theft, auto forgery, filing false government documents, and conspiracy. The family fallout was extensive. Relatives who had initially dismissed the situation as a petty squabble now realized the potential consequences. Some distanced themselves completely. Others doubled down on pressuring me to drop the charges. My grandmother, my father's mother, called me in tears. "Travis, please stop this madness. Your father could lose his job if this goes to trial. Is that old car really worth destroying our family?" "I did not destroy the family, Grandma," I replied gently. "They did that when they decided to steal from me. and forge my signature. But prison. You would send your own parents to prison over a car. Her words stung, but I stood firm. I did not put them in this position. They made choices, illegal choices, and now there are consequences. The most difficult family encounter came when my cousin Jennifer organized what she called a family mediation at her house. I agreed to attend, hoping there might be a path to resolution that did not involve years of court battles. When I arrived, I found not just my parents and Max, but almost every adult family member from both sides. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even my grandfather, who rarely left his nursing home. It was an ambush. We are all here because we love this family. Jennifer began once everyone was seated in her crowded living room. This situation has gotten out of hand, and it is time to bring it back to what matters: our bonds as a family. I remained silent as various relatives took turns explaining why I should drop the charges. The recurring theme was that family loyalty should supersede all else, including the law. No one addressed the fundamental injustice of what had been done to me. When my turn to speak finally came, I was calm but resolute. I appreciate that you all care about our family. I do too. That is why this hurts so much. Family should be the people who respect you most, not the ones who take advantage of you. My father interrupted. No one took advantage of you. You have always been so dramatic. You stole my car, I replied evenly. You forged my signature. You damaged something I worked years to build. These are facts, not drama. We were trying to help your brother, my mother interjected. Something you have never been willing to do. I have helped Max countless times. I helped him with college applications, with job resumes. I even loaned him money last year that he never repaid. What I was not willing to do was give him my most prized possession without even being asked. Max, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. You know what, Travis is right. The room fell silent. My brother, who never took my side in anything, continued. What we did was wrong. Mom and Dad, you always taught us about honesty and respecting other people's property, but then you did this. And I went along with it because I wanted that cool car. But it was wrong, and we all know it. My parents looked at Max with shock and disappointment. My father started to speak, but Max cut him off. And it is not the first time. Remember Travis's guitar collection that disappeared when he was in college? We sold those to pay for my summer camp. And his rare comic books that mysteriously got water damaged, Dad threw them out because he needed the storage space for my sports equipment. Each revelation was like a physical blow. I had suspected some of these incidents, but had convinced myself I was being paranoid. Hearing Max confirm them made me realize the pattern of theft and disregard had been going on for years. The family mediation ended with no resolution. If anything, the divisions were deeper than before. But Max's unexpected moment of honesty had changed something. As I was leaving, he followed me to my car. I really am sorry, he said, avoiding eye contact. I should have stood up to them sooner. Why did not you? I asked. He shrugged. It was easier not to. They always made it seem normal, like you owed it to me somehow. I knew it was wrong, but I liked being the favorite. It was the most honest conversation we had ever had. I did not forgive him there and then, but it was a start. The case continued to progress. The handwriting analysis confirmed that the signature on the transfer document was a forgery, most likely created by my father. Thomas Wilkins provided detailed testimony about how the illegal transfer was processed. The evidence was mounting. My parents made one final attempt to end the case before trial. Their lawyer proposed a settlement. They would return the car and pay for all damages if I dropped both the criminal charges and civil suit. Additionally, they wanted me to sign a non-disclosure agreement, preventing me from ever discussing the matter publicly. Sarah advised against accepting. The NDA is particularly troubling, she said. They are not just trying to avoid legal consequences, they are trying to silence you completely. I declined the offer. After all that had happened, I needed more than just getting Eleanor back. I needed accountability. I needed the truth to be officially recognized. As the trial date approached, my resolve was tested daily. Strangers in town who had heard about the case through gossip would give me disapproving looks. Anonymous messages appeared on my social media suggesting I was destroying my family over just a car. My mother's friends from church sent me Bible verses about forgiveness. Through it all, I held onto one simple truth: I had done nothing wrong. I was the victim, not the villain. And sometimes justice matters more than peace. The courthouse was an imposing stone building in the center of town, its steps worn from generations of footsteps, seeking justice or facing consequences. On the morning of the trial, I arrived early with Sarah at my side. We had prepared exhaustively, reviewing documents, practicing testimony, anticipating opposing arguments. Still, my stomach churned with anxiety. "Remember," Sarah said as we climbed the steps, "stay calm. Answer only what is asked and trust the process." The courtroom was already filling when we entered. I saw my parents and Max seated at the defendant's table with Martin Goldstein and 2 junior associates. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, the picture of maternal distress. My father sat rigidly, staring straight ahead, his jaw clenched. Max looked genuinely uncomfortable, fidgeting and avoiding eye contact with anyone. To my surprise, Uncle Bob was already seated in the gallery. He nodded encouragingly when our eyes met. Behind my parents sat several relatives and family friends, their expressions ranging from concern to outright hostility when they looked my way. Judge Eleanor Martinez entered, and court was called to session. The proceedings began with opening statements. The prosecutor, Daniel Chen, laid out the case methodically. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of theft, forgery, and fraud. The evidence will show that the defendants took a vehicle legally owned by the plaintiff, forged his signature on title transfer documents, and conspired with a DMV employee to process fraudulent paperwork. These actions were not accidental or misguided. They were calculated, deliberate, and illegal." Martin Goldstein's opening statement took a different approach, appealing to emotion rather than law. "Your Honor, this case should never have reached your courtroom. This is a family matter that has been tragically mischaracterized. The Walsh family purchased this vehicle for their son Travis, with the understanding it would remain family property. When their younger son, Maxwell, needed the vehicle temporarily, Travis vindictively chose to weaponize the legal system against his own parents. The state should not be in the business of mediating sibling rivalries." I clenched my fists under the table at the blatant lies. Sarah placed a calming hand on my arm, reminding me to maintain composure. The prosecution called me as their first witness. Under Daniel Chen's questioning, I recounted the entire story, working and saving for years, purchasing the Mustang with my own money. The restoration process, discovering the theft, and the confrontation with my family. I presented bank statements, the original bill of sale, insurance documents, and photographs, documenting the restoration process. When cross-examination began, Goldstein's approach was aggressive and personal. "Mr. Walsh, would you describe yourself as a generous person?" he asked. "I believe I am," I replied cautiously. "Yet you refused to allow your brother even temporary use of your vehicle when he was trying to improve his life circumstances." "I was never asked for permission. The car was taken while I was away." "Because you would have said no, correct? Despite knowing how important it was to your brother." "I cannot say what I would have decided if asked properly. I was never given that choice." Goldstein shifted tactics. "Your parents provided room and board while you began saving for this car, did they not?" "I lived at home until I was 18, yes." "So they subsidized your ability to save by not charging rent, providing food, paying utilities. Is that correct?" "As most parents do for their minor children, yes." "And you never considered that their support entitled them to some say in how family resources, including this vehicle, might be allocated?" "The car was purchased with my own earnings years after I moved out. It was never a family resource." The questioning continued in this vein, attempting to paint me as an ungrateful, selfish son. Goldstein implied that my parents had contributed financially to the purchase. They had not. That there had been verbal agreements about shared ownership. There had not. And that I was using the legal system vindictively. I was seeking justice, not revenge. Throughout my testimony, I maintained composure, answering truthfully and clearly. When I stepped down from the witness stand, Sarah gave me an approving nod. The prosecution's next witness was Thomas Wilkins, the DMV employee who had processed the fraudulent title transfer. Looking nervous and remorseful, he testified that my father had called him directly asking for a special favor regarding a vehicle title transfer. He told me it was a family situation, that his sons were arguing over a car, and he needed to get the title transferred quickly, without all the usual requirements, Wilkins testified. I knew it was wrong, but we went back 30 years. I trusted him when he said it was just smoothing over a family dispute. Wilkins confirmed that neither I nor my brother had appeared in person for the transfer as legally required. He admitted to backdating the paperwork and processing it without proper verification of signatures or identification. My father was called to testify next. Under oath, he presented yet another version of events. The car was always intended as a gift for Travis, he claimed. We helped him purchase it. Do you have any documentation showing your financial contribution to the purchase, the prosecutor asked. It was cash. Family transactions do not always come with receipts, my father replied. And the title transfer, why not ask Travis to sign it properly, if this was, as you claim, a family understanding? He was being difficult. We knew he would refuse out of spite. So you admit to forging his signature? My father paused, realizing he had backed himself into a corner. I signed on his behalf with what I believed was implied family authority. The testimony continued with my mother, who largely echoed my father's claims, but grew flustered under cross-examination when confronted with the inconsistencies in their story. Max was the final defendant to testify. To everyone's surprise, his testimony diverged significantly from my parents. I knew it was wrong, he admitted quietly. I knew the car belonged to Travis, but Mom and Dad insisted it was okay, that as a family we shared everything. I wanted that car so badly that I convinced myself to believe them. Did you witness or participate in the forgery of your brother's signature? The prosecutor asked. No, but I knew about it. Dad did the signing. Mom made the calls to arrange it all. My parents looked stunned at Max's candor. Their lawyer quickly requested a recess to confer with his clients, which the judge granted. When court resumed 20 minutes later, the atmosphere had shifted. Goldstein approached the bench and requested a brief conference with the prosecutor and judge. After several minutes of hushed discussion, Judge Martinez addressed the courtroom. Based on new information, the defendants wished to amend their testimony. Mr. Goldstein, you may proceed. My father returned to the witness stand, his face ashen. I wish to correct my previous testimony. I did forge Travis's signature on the title transfer. My wife was aware of this action. We did take the vehicle without permission. While we still believe there was a family understanding about shared resources, we acknowledge that legally the vehicle belonged solely to Travis. It was as close to an admission of guilt as I was likely to get. The judge ordered a brief recess before closing arguments. As the courtroom emptied, Uncle Bob approached me. I am proud of you for standing your ground, he said. But there is something else you should know. He pulled out his phone and showed me a video. I took this the day you bought Eleanor. Remember how excited you were? I recorded the whole transaction. The video clearly showed me handing over a cashier's check to the seller, signing the original title transfer, and receiving the keys. My parents were nowhere in the video. This was definitive proof that the purchase had been mine alone. I was planning to give you this as a surprise for your 30th birthday, edited together with clips of the restoration, but I think the court needs to see it now. When court resumed, our legal team presented the video as new evidence. The judge admitted it, and it was played for the court. The footage was unambiguous proof of my sole ownership from the beginning. In his closing argument, the prosecutor emphasized the clear pattern of deception. The defendants have changed their story multiple times, contradicted each other, and only admitted wrongdoing when confronted with irrefutable evidence. The law is clear: taking property without permission is theft. Signing someone else's name on a legal document is forgery. These actions cannot be excused by family relationships. Goldstein's closing argument was subdued, focusing primarily on requesting leniency rather than asserting innocence. While my clients acknowledged their actions were legally inappropriate, we asked the court to consider the context of a family in distress, making poor decisions out of misguided love for their younger son. Judge Martinez took only 30 minutes to deliberate before delivering her verdict. She found my parents guilty of theft, forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Max was found guilty of receiving stolen property, but with a recommendation for leniency based on his cooperative testimony. The family relationship between the parties does not excuse criminal behavior, the judge stated firmly. In fact, it makes these violations of trust all the more serious. My parents were sentenced to 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service each, and ordered to pay a substantial fine. They narrowly avoided jail time due to their previously clean records. Max received 1 year of probation and community service. Additionally, the judge ordered full restoration of the vehicle to my ownership and payment of all costs associated with repairing the damage done during their possession. As the gavel fell, finalizing the judgment, a strange mixture of emotions washed over me. There was vindication, yes, but also a profound sadness. The relationship with my parents would never be the same. Yet beneath that sadness was something unexpected relief. The truth had been acknowledged. Justice, however, painful, had been served. Eleanor came back to me a week after the trial. The court had ordered my parents to return her immediately, but they had requested a few days to arrange transportation. When the flatbed truck delivered her to my garage, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Joy at having her back, anger at the visible damage, and a deep sadness about the circumstances of her return. The damage was worse than I had initially realized. Beyond the dent in the quarter panel and the scratched paint, there were problems with the transmission from improper shifting, worn brake pads from aggressive driving, and a cracked windshield that had been poorly repaired with an off-the-wand shelf kit. The cheap plastic hood scoop had been attached with industrial adhesive that damaged the paint when removed. The original vintage radio had been replaced with a garish modern unit that did not even fit properly in the dashboard. The court ordered my parents to pay for all repairs, but I insisted on doing most of the work myself. I did not want strangers touching Eleanor again. The restoration became a form of therapy, each repaired component helping heal something within me as well. The family fracture was complete. My parents refused all contact after the trial. They did not respond to the few messages I sent, and they returned the Christmas card I mailed without opening it. Through relatives, I heard they considered themselves the victims, claiming I had chosen a car over family. They never acknowledged the deeper issues of theft, forgery, and the lifetime pattern of favoring Max at my expense. The extended family divided into camps. Some relatives understood my position and maintained relationships with me. Others sided with my parents, viewing me as the villain who had dragged family matters into court. Thanksgiving and Christmas that year were fragmented affairs, with relatives hosting separate gatherings to avoid conflict. Uncle Bob remained my strongest ally. He visited regularly, often bringing coffee and donuts on Saturday mornings to help with Eleanor's restoration. During those hours in the garage, he shared stories about my father as a young man before bitterness and favoritism had warped his perspective. "Your dad was different," once Uncle Bob told me one morning as we replaced Eleanor's damaged upholstery. "When we were kids, he was the one who stood up for what was right, even when it was difficult. Somewhere along the way, he lost that part of himself." Those conversations helped me understand that my parents' actions, while inexcusable, were part of a longer, more complicated story. It did not justify what they had done, but it helped me process my anger into something less consuming. The emotional toll was significant. I experienced nightmares about the trial, moments of intense anger when remembering their betrayal, and periods of doubt about whether I had done the right thing. At Sarah's suggestion, I started seeing Dr. Martinez, a therapist specializing in family trauma. "What you are experiencing is a form of grief," Dr. Martinez explained during one session. "You are mourning the loss of the family you thought you had, or perhaps the family you wished you had." Through therapy, I began to recognize how the dynamics of my childhood had shaped my self-worth. Always being second best, always having to prove myself, always watching my achievements be dismissed, while Max's mediocrity was celebrated. These patterns had affected my relationships with others, my career choices, even my hobbies like car restoration, which represented something I could control completely. The car became more than transportation, I admitted during one therapy session. It was tangible proof of my worth, something no one could take away from me. Except they did take it away. "And you fought to get it back," Dr. Martinez pointed out. "That is significant. The old pattern would have been to accept the loss, to believe you did not deserve to keep something valuable. Instead, you stood up for yourself. Those words resonated deeply. I had broken the pattern. For perhaps the first time, I had refused to be the family scapegoat, refused to sacrifice my needs for Max's wants, refused to accept the narrative that I was selfish for having boundaries. 6 months after the trial, Eleanor was fully restored once again. The process had been cathartic, transforming my anger into focused determination. I celebrated with a solo road trip along the coast, the rumble of her engine, and the wind through the open windows washing away some of the lingering hurt. During this period of healing, my social circle shifted significantly. Some friends drifted away, uncomfortable with the family drama, or unable to understand why I had taken such a hard stance. Others, particularly from the classic car community, rallied around me with unexpected support. I joined a local classic car club where Eleanor was appreciated for the masterpiece she was. Sunday drives with the club became a highlight of my week. These men and women understood the passion, the craftsmanship, the devotion that went into preserving automotive history. They never questioned why I had fought so hard to reclaim her. Through the club, I met people who became like a chosen family. There was Richard, a retired mechanic, who could diagnose engine problems by sound alone. Maria, who restored vintage Corvettes and took no nonsense from the occasionally sexist older members. And Thomas, a high school automotive teacher who brought his most promising students to club events to inspire their interest in restoration. This community provided something my biological family had rarely offered: unconditional acceptance and genuine appreciation for my skills and knowledge. My relationship with Sarah evolved during this time as well. What had begun as attorney-client interactions gradually shifted to friendship and then unexpectedly to romance. She understood the legal and emotional complexities of my situation in ways others could not. Our first official date was a drive along the lakeshore in Eleanor, now fully restored to her former glory. "You know," Sarah said as we watched the sunset from a scenic overlook, "most people would have given up. They would have accepted the loss rather than faced the pain of confronting family." I came close to giving up, I admitted. There were moments I questioned whether a car was worth all this. It was never just about the car, though, was it? "No," I said after a thoughtful pause. "It was about whether I mattered enough to fight for." The most surprising development came 7 months after the trial, when Max contacted me. He had moved out of our parents' house and was working full-time for the first time in his life, sharing an apartment with 2 roommates. "Can we meet?" he asked when he called. "I need to talk to you." We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. Max looked different, somehow more substantial, less like the entitled boy who had always hidden behind our parents' protection. "I want to apologize," he said after we had settled with our drinks. "Not just for the car, for everything. For letting them treat you that way all these years, for taking advantage of it, for never standing up for you." His apology seemed genuine, but I remained cautious. What changed? The trial, obviously, but also seeing how differently they treated me once I stopped being the perfect son who went along with everything. He stirred his coffee absently. After I testified honestly, they were different with me. Cold, disappointed. For the first time, I understood a fraction of what you dealt with your whole life. We talked for nearly 3 hours that day. Max shared revelations about other instances where my parents had taken my possessions or undermined my achievements. I shared how those experiences had affected me. It was painful but necessary, a lancing of old wounds that had festered for too long. "I am not asking for forgiveness," Max said as we prepared to leave. "I know it is too soon, maybe impossible. I just wanted you to know I understand now and I am sorry." I did not offer forgiveness that day, but I did offer something else. "How about we meet again next month? Same place." It was a small step toward something new. Not the restoration of what was lost, but perhaps the construction of something different, something healthier. As the 1-year anniversary of the trial approached, Eleanor gleamed in my garage, fully restored once again. My relationship with Sarah had deepened. My bond with Uncle Bob was stronger than ever. The car club had become a second family. Even Max and I were cautiously building a new relationship based on honesty and respect, rather than competition and resentment. My parents remained estranged by their choice. The door remained open on my side, conditional on acknowledgement and genuine remorse, but I had accepted that they might never walk through it. That acceptance, painful as it was, represented its own form of healing. What had begun as a fight for a car had become something much more significant, a reclamation of self-worth, a breaking of unhealthy patterns, and the construction of a life where I was valued for exactly who I was. Today marks exactly 1 year since I drove Eleanor home from that final restoration. The Highland green paint catches the morning sun as I polish her hood, the chrome trim gleaming like new. Every curve and contour of this '67 Mustang tells a story not just of automotive history but of my personal journey through betrayal, justice, and ultimately healing. Looking back at everything that happened, I realize now that this experience, painful as it was, forced me to confront truths I had been avoiding my entire life. The car became the catalyst for a long, overdue reckoning. The most profound lesson I learned was about boundaries. For years I had allowed my parents and brother to cross lines that should have been inviolable. I had accepted their narrative that my needs and possessions were somehow less important, that I was selfish for not sacrificing whatever they demanded. Standing firm finally broke that destructive pattern. Boundaries are not selfish, Dr. Martinez told me during one of our final therapy sessions. They are necessary for healthy relationships. When someone tells you that your boundaries are selfish, what they are really saying is that your needs are inconvenient for them. Those words resonated deeply. I had spent years believing something was wrong with me for wanting fair treatment. Now I understood that the dysfunction lay in the system, not in my reasonable expectations of respect. The second lesson came through the painful process of letting go. Not of Eleanor, but of the fantasy that my parents would someday acknowledge their favoritism and change their behavior. Accepting that they might never see the harm they caused was excruciating but ultimately liberating. Uncle Bob helped me navigate this difficult acceptance. Sometimes the family we are born into is not the family that nurtures us, he said during one of our weekend restoration sessions. That does not mean you cannot find that nurturing elsewhere. He was right. The car club's Sarah, even some of my colleagues who stood by me through the ordeal, they had become a chosen family that provided the support and acknowledgement my biological family could not. The third lesson involved the nature of forgiveness. Many well-meaning people urged me to forgive my parents for my own peace of mind, regardless of whether they acknowledged their actions. But I came to understand that true forgiveness cannot be forced or rushed. Forgiveness is not an obligation, Sarah pointed out one evening as we discussed the ongoing estrangement. It is a gift you can choose to give when and if you are ready. And it does not necessarily mean reconciliation. This perspective freed me from the guilt I had felt about maintaining distance from my parents. Forgiveness might come someday, but it would be on my timeline, not anyone else's, and it would not require me to expose myself to further harm. Perhaps the most unexpected lesson came through my evolving relationship with Max. 6 months of monthly coffee meetings had gradually rebuilt a fragile trust between us. He had maintained his independence from our parents, working steadily, and even enrolling in community college courses. "I never really knew you," he admitted during our most recent meeting. "I only knew the version of you that Mom and Dad created to justify how they treated you." Getting to know each other as adults, without our parents' influence coloring every interaction, revealed surprising commonalities we had never recognized. While we would never be best friends, we had established a relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition. The legal battle over Eleanor had financial and emotional costs I had not anticipated. The attorney fees, even with Sarah's generous discount, had depleted much of my savings. The emotional toll affected my work performance for months. Some friendships were casualties of people's discomfort with family conflict. Yet when I balance those costs against what I gained, the equation favors what I learned and how I grew. I discovered my own strength, built authentic relationships, and finally freed myself from patterns established in childhood. Eleanor sits in my garage now, not just as a meticulously restored classic car, but as a symbol of perseverance and self-respect. Every time I take her for a drive, the rumble of her V8 engine reminds me that some things are worth fighting for, especially your sense of self-worth. Sarah and I are engaged now, planning a small wedding for next spring. Uncle Bob will be my best man. Even Max will attend, a testament to the new boundaries and relationships we have all established. My parents' invitation remains unwritten. The door remains conditionally open should they ever choose to walk a path of genuine accountability and respect. I no longer wait anxiously by that door, however. I am too busy living a life built on healthier foundations. If there is one message I hope resonates with anyone hearing my story, it is this. You have the right to be treated with respect, even by family, especially by family. Standing up for yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. And sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most meaningful victories. Have you ever had to stand up to family for something that mattered deeply to you? Was it worth the conflict? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this account of my journey with Eleanor helped you in any way, please like and subscribe to support more stories of personal growth through adversity. And remember, sharing these experiences helps others feel less alone in their own family struggles. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to honor your own boundaries wherever life takes you.